very, very good evening, and thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful that, as you said quite correctly, there are so many more things to do on a Sunday evening, but to see so many of you here with no seating space, I think we need to give the Calcutta Club and the city of Calcutta a big round of applause. I think that's fabulous. And I heard them say the moderator is the star of the show. You got it wrong. The moderator is the masters of ceremony. The stars of the show are very much today your 10 speakers. Let's be very, very clear about that. I will only be doing timekeeper. Swati and I are good at keeping time, and I will announce the speakers. I feel very passionately about this subject, though, and I'm very, very glad because it's a non-political subject. As you can see, news is dead. Long live fake news. It's beyond the politics. And it's not something which has happened in the last 3.5 years, nor has it happened in the last 10 years. I remember a few years ago when I was to discuss this with my father, we had to jokingly say at the dining table, you know, the first piece of fake news was, on a Sunday maybe I shouldn't say this, but someone converted water into wine. And then that got spread. So who knows whether that wasn't some fake news. The rules, speakers, it's 5 minutes each. At the end of 5 minutes, you will get a bell from Swati. Swati, can we have a dummy run? That's the bell. At the end of 7 minutes, you will get another bell, which will sound like this. Okay? And at the end of, we won't stop you at 7, but at the end of 7.5 minutes or 7 minutes 40 seconds, we will cajole you to end your speech. Okay? If you have an Indian passport, we will switch your mic off at 7 minutes 40 seconds. If you have a British or an Irish passport, we'll turn the lights off. All right. Well, just on fake news, just to give you a little bit of overall perspective without taking sides, fake news could be propaganda, rumors. What else can fake news be? Entertainment, sources of entertainment. You know, James Bond movies, perhaps in the way they idolized the MI6, perhaps that was fake news. So entertainment can be a very positive experience for fake news. Conspiracy theories, and of course, fake news, as I said, is not something which happened here in the last few years. There are lots of very interesting books, and if you haven't, after this debate, if you haven't, you may have read many magazines or seen many video clips, but I'm here to promote, and I've never met the lady, but she's written a book. Her name is Kelly Greenhill, and she's from Yale, and she's written a fabulous book on fake news. She doesn't call it fake news, she calls it something else, and there's some really interesting theories. But you're not here today to listen to the moderator, nor are you listening to Kelly Greenhill. By the way, I don't believe in online polls, so you guys feel good about 65% versus 35%, but most online polls are unbelievable. So let's begin. News is dead. Long live fake news. It's a delight for Calcutta to move the motion today. Please welcome Salman Khurshid.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, distinguished panelists from both sides. I stand to propose the motion, and I have a very distinguished panel with me who would inevitably improve upon anything that I am going to say. I was somewhat delighted by the figures that have come on offline poll showing that there is extensive support for us, and all we need to do now is to ensure that that support survives. My difficulty, and I hope that's the difficulty of my panel too, is in our victory may lie our defeat. It's the prolonged fake news phenomena that we're here to propose and defend, which can, in a sense, become a great worry. And as I stand here, I recall the words from Julius Caesar, and the words that were really from the speech that was made by Mark Antony. And if I may just quickly go over those words to say that I would change them around a little bit for this wonderful Calcutta audience. Friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. And so I say to you, good people of Calcutta, that you're honorable in many different ways, more productive and more creative than perhaps Brutus was. But the second part of the proposition is something that I do reflect by taking another 4 lines from the same speech and say, but as I speak, what I do know, that you did once love him, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. So my heart too is in the coffin with news that is dead. And therefore, do not believe that we are here to celebrate. You do not believe that we're here in an excited way to say how wonderful that news is dead, and that fake news should now live longer. But that's the condition that we have to support. That's the condition that we have to establish. And what happens thereafter is perhaps for another debate altogether. I do want to say to you is that it's interesting that the organizers chose to say news is dead, long live fake news, very carefully avoiding any commitment to long life for the anchors who are giving us fake news. So clearly, there is place for other fake news anchors, at least as far as this particular panel is concerned. I do believe that there is a positive element in fake news as well. The chairman just mentioned that fake news is of a different kind, and I hope that the fake news has some positive element too. Not everything fake is bad. Sometimes in diplomacy, you say things that are, in a sense, economical with the truth, and that's done to avoid greater hostility or greater clashes of civilizations or greater clashes of groups of people and greater clashes of communities. Because sometimes telling the truth can have very, very serious consequences. And therefore, avoiding the truth entirely and not giving it as we understand that news is truth and truth is news, then you could end up with creating a greater problem for yourself. But that is not to say that every form of fake news would necessarily give that. Other kinds of fake news give you a great deal of agony. And therefore, the reason why we stand here to support fake news is to say that the fake news itself, if it lives long enough, would be the most persuasive argument against fake news being destructive of the way of life that we cherish, of democracy that we cherish. There is nothing else that you can do. We have some very eminent surgeons here on both sides. This is not something that you can exercise. This is not something that you could remove. This is not something that you could destroy by using medical equivalent of an operation, of exercising it out of the system. This is something that the system must recognize, must learn, must figure out that this is something that we want to get rid of. 5 minutes are over, 2 more minutes to go. I was hoping that meanwhile we would hear what you people have voted to begin with, but it hasn't come. Rest of my speakers will carry it through. I'm reminded of something that Mullah Nasruddin had once said. When Mullah Nasruddin had been bitten by a rabid dog, or allegedly a rabid dog, Mullah Nasruddin went to a doctor and asked what treatment you could give me. And as they were working out on the treatment, he sat down and started writing a lot of names on a list. And the nurse asked, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Well, so long as I'm rabid, I want to make sure who are the guys that I want to bite. These are the list of people that I want to bite and finish off. And then I know that you might be able to treat me." There's again the same Mullah Nasruddin with a psychiatrist saying, "I get evil thoughts, the sort of evil thoughts you get with fake news. I get evil thoughts. Can you help me somehow manage?" And the psychiatrist said, you have to get your willpower stronger. You have to fight these evil thoughts. He said, "No, I wasn't thinking of fighting the evil thoughts. Could you do something to make sure that the evil thoughts can last longer, that they could live a longer time?" So sometimes you have to go to a doctor to say, "May my evil thoughts live a long time." only so that finally everybody discovers what the impact of evil thoughts are. We are here to support fake news only so that fake news will itself work itself out of our system, like a poison works itself out of the system and gets you back to good health. And that's what I hope to do, and that's what I've tried to do in these few minutes. Remember that there is ultimately an issue about what is truth. Those of you who've known Kurosawa's Rashomon know that 4 different people looking at one incident come to 4 different conclusions, and 4 different conclusions are difficult to judge about what is the truth, and therefore, what is the news? Well, my bell rings, but last thing that I would want to say to you is, as my bell rings, let me just say this to you, that this is a process that we are going through. This is a process of learning, just as we are learning about voting, and I do hope that your voting is a little more accurate than the voting that we've been subjected to in the last few years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Khurshid. I got to keep reminding myself that I'm sitting here in the middle. Mr. Khurshid had a little dig at the television anchors, and I'm going to give a line in support of our television anchors, because they're not the only guys who are peddling fake news. It's each one of us. How many of you have sat in this hall and forwarded a WhatsApp without verifying that WhatsApp? Or even I put up my hand. 3.5 years ago, I put up a morphed image without checking it. And thankfully, the research team found out that it was a morphed image. So we took the image off within 2 hours and apologized. So before we start throwing stones at everybody else, next time you forward a WhatsApp, each one of us here, just be a little careful. All right. So now that I've made my apology. Okay, now, what's happening this evening? We are having a subject like this. First, we had a lawyer, and then we have a doctor. And you know what your parents always told you, is that the only 2 people you should confide in are your lawyer and your doctor. So please welcome full-time cardiac surgeon, otherwise you're going to lose all your patients, full-time cardiac surgeon and part-time debater, Kunal Sarkar, the first speaker to oppose the motion.
Derek, thank you very much. Mr. Salman Khurshid reminded us of friends, Romans, and countrymen. So friends, Calcuttans, and co-debaters, we come here to bury the hyperbole. We stand in front of you with a level-headed diagnostics that differentiates paranoia, hyperbole, overstatements from a hardcore diagnostics of what the real world means for you and me. The motion which is straddled in front of you is an expression of the extreme. An expression of extreme comes from people in times of dire stress. Yes, we have people on the other side who are expressed to the most severe of stressful conditions. Mr. Salman Khurshid from the Indian National Congress, who has been constitutionally allergic to sitting in the opposition ever since the country became independent, and that manifests in the incoherence of logic. And the biggest crisis in today's world is really the proximity between Cyrus and Nalini, because one is ending up looking more like the other. The most serious news item you have in Indian television today is the week that wasn't. If you ever wanted to find out that what actually happened, you have to wait for Cyrus's slot either on YouTube or wherever he comes on. And what is more astounding is his interviewing techniques has been copied, which is answers first and question later, has been copied verbatim by each and every channel that exists on the electronic pantheon, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Dolan. Sean Dolan comes from a first world who is swimming in a mass of confusion, otherwise called Brexit. Right? Nobody has the foggiest clue. It is a third world dialectics prevailing in a first world country, and I'm sure nobody knows the way out of it. They're just waiting for the divine to take over. Shundeep Chatterjee and myself is under the most severe of stress, because at this point of time, Shundeep and myself, Debating is the only paramedical activity which is not under the purview of any commission. Apart from that, every breath we take, every move we make, every biological activity we do, we have to WhatsApp to a certain commission, get the permission first, and then move on. I hope the same standards applied to the auditors and the chartered accountants, ladies and gentlemen. The conversation Salman referred to, between being economical with the truth, where the Mufti made the psychiatrist and said, let my evil thoughts go on. It reminded me of a possible conversation between Nirav Modi and Punjab National Bank, ladies and gentlemen. And that is exactly the syndrome we are in today, because we refuse to see reality for what it is. What plagues news, what plagues media is not fake news, ladies and gentlemen. It is the genuine news that plagues the media. It is the presentation of the truth which is the disease, and not some 0.002% factual errors that floats in the information domain. And that happens because globally, the news and information spreading industry is mounted on a platform of unviability. Jeff Brin is the only privileged person who has a news spreading machinery which survives on public funding, which is allegedly independent. What happens to the rest of the industry? The rest of the industry celebrates its financial malnourishment, because of which, in a few weeks to a few months' time, you are either in the pockets of the government directly, or you are in the pockets of one of the corporates who is in the pocket of the government. And in other words, we are all behaving like megaphones and choir boys and choir girls in no time at all. The only people who've got it right are the cable channel operators, because of which the news and the devotional channels are placed very close to one another. Because some of these channels, if you flick from one to the other, you will be terribly confused whether you were in the bhajan kirtan session or in the news rendering session. And hence, it is we on the opposition who come down with the real life diagnostics that do not pull wool over the eyes. Yes, there is fake news. I counted the statistic of Telegraph. 72,000 news items in a year, probably there were 100 factual errors out of 72,000 news items, which gives you a statistical incidence of 0.00125%. That is not the kind of cancer at the root of the news media. Why the news media is compromised? Because not that you lack a brain, but because you lack a spine to stand erect on. For future generations, and ladies and gentlemen, for the 100-odd students who've gathered this evening, ladies and gentlemen, it is vital that civic society, that the democratic construct, treasures for itself the credibility, the value of truth, and we do not subscribe to any of the panderings of half-truths and sometimes falsehoods being better than the truth being spoken. No, never, not at all. It is for that generation, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to make sure, with human intelligence, either natural or artificial, that we have the courage of conviction to have viable news media, whether it is social media, whether it is electronic media, whether it is print media. It is immaterial, but let the facts reign supreme, and fake news is only a small blister on the face of a rabid systemic disease. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kunal. I didn't want to give you the results of the poll you did till both the speakers finished speaking. So you saw the online poll, which said something like 65-35. So I've just been given the poll conducted today, and here are the results of that poll. Actually, before I give you the results of that poll, I offered one counter argument to what Salman ji said. So that doesn't mean I'm on this side. So I'm going to offer one counter argument to what Kunal said, and please take it in that spirit. The statistic which Kunal gave us was of a single newspaper. I think we are consuming news today way above from print. There's a lot of content being generated outside the print medium. So do we have any statistics on that? And if we do have, well, maybe share in the next few minutes. But here we go. Now, do online polls work in the same way as the Calcutta? I just want to ask a question to Kunal and Shondeep, since you all were debating. Was this poll conducted only with Calcutta Club members? Oh, it's over the social media. Interesting. So does Calcutta Club members think the same way as the social media on the subject? Now, this is very interesting. When the poll was run in the social media for the motion, that is, news is dead, long live fake news, 65% for the motion, 35% against the motion. And guess what the Calcutta Club said? They said the same two numbers, 65 and 35, it's the same. You voted just like the online poll did. Okay, so that's interesting. That's interesting. You have the match to, you only have the match to lose, but you can win. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I wish my doctor or my dentist, who is here in the audience, has a sense of humor like Kunal. Doctor visits would be a lot happier. All right, now let's get to, of all the descriptions to describe this lady, I think journalism, etc., but investigative journalism, I think, is the two words I would like to use to describe, to welcome this lady to Calcutta. Please, a warm round of applause for Nalini Singh.
Thank you very much, the organizers of this debate, and it's wonderful to be back in Kolkata again. I accepted for two reasons, but before I tell you the reasons, I'm actually quite amazed at Dr. Sarkar sitting on that side. He has acknowledged fully that the news media is not viable, which is exactly what we are saying, we will prove. So why doesn't he just take my seat? I'm not going that side, by the way. But I accepted for two reasons. One of them is that I spend a lot of time in Delhi, in TV studios, in TV debates with the spokespersons of political parties. Now, these spokespersons are actually belong to the school of the North Korean Kim Jong-un school of glorification of the supreme leader, come what may. And these are really fake news factories. And they generate, these are fog machines. They generate fog. They obscure debates. They interrupt. They humiliate. They do not stick to the topic because, and this is going to get worse up to March 23rd. Please mark my words, because 58 Rajya Sabha seats are coming up for election, and lots of spokespersons harbor this, this secret desire to be nominated by their parties. So watch that. That's the first reason I came, because now I'm getting my back on them. The second is, I come from Delhi, which is actually the pioneer of fake news. Some of you will remember, your parents will remember, the summer of 1971, where a gentleman called Rustam Nargawala called the chief cashier of the State Bank of India, lead branch in the country, and said he was Indira Gandhi speaking, and that immediately 60 lakh rupees in cash had to be delivered to a taxi stand in Chanakyapuri. The cashier said, "Acha Mataji," and took 60 lakh rupees and delivered to this. And he was also told, the cashier, that a code word will be told to you, that all that was done. Well, Rustam Nagalwala was arrested 3 days later. But before, then he started saying that he was going to expose the actual truth, the core of what happened. A week before that, he died of cardiac arrest in Tihar jail or a Delhi jail. But 11 months later, the main witness of the State Bank of India, the general manager, died mysteriously in a car crash. So I come from that Delhi, where fake news actually was pioneered. But I wouldn't want to skip this opportunity of paying tribute to the father of the modern usage of fake news, Donald Trump, who has refined it to such an extent that now there is a variant of fake news is catch and kill, which many of you have read about. In 10 seconds, he has allegedly had affairs with one adult porn artist and one Playboy Bunny of the Year in 2006. Nothing happened for eight years or so. When he decided to run for president, his aides went and told these two ladies that we are going to buy your stories for publication, but sole rights to us. Of course, they did not publish the stories, and after that, the army of fake news, the factory of fake news of Donald Trump, went about saying that the real news was the fake news. So this is how complex it gets, but this is how true it is. Now, I would like to say to you, and please to my word, extremely intelligent opposition, but a more intelligent crowd, that audience, that actually the people in power have a lot to gain from fake news. And therefore, there is an insatiable demand for fake news. It's much safer than having real news leak out. And why am I saying this? And I'll give you, as I said, extremely intelligent, I'll just give you 2 or 3 very short examples. The Reserve Bank of India, we are told, is still counting the currency that befuddled Indians surrendered starting at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. on December 9th, 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 443 days today from December 9th. The Reserve Bank is still counting, we are told. On the other hand, Nirav Modi flees the country. It becomes public news within 2 hours. The investigating agencies say that they have identified, seized, classified, evaluated the gems and the rest of whatever he left behind, and it is 5,600 crores. What I would say to you is that these are amazing fake news. One of them is fake, either Reserve Bank or this. Let me talk about the judges, our justices, who on 12th January poured their hearts out and said there's something incredibly wrong happening in the Supreme Court. But what was the news in many prominent channels that evening? That, in fact, the CPI leader D. Raja had gone to meet Justice Chalamaleshwara. I mean, how could that be news? So, this is what I mean when TV anchors obstruct, humiliate, they turn the debates around. I get the feeling in the studio that actually the outcome is pre-decided, and they are not waiting for the outcome of the debate. So that confirms my belief in fake news. I'll just give you a very short but poignant example from my life. 2-3 months ago, I was just switching channels, and I heard my name on such a prominent channel that says it's number one, an English channel. And when you hear your name, you pause. And it was I think they relapse into a discussion on Sunanda Pushkar's murder when they have nothing else to do. So this was that. And they said Nalini Singh has said that Sunanda Pushkar told her on that last phone call that the IPL, the Kochi Tuskers, were actually, bothering her. Shashi Tharoor had was pressurizing her, etc. And kind of she has indicated, I have indicated that the IPL was the cause of her murder, so-called, in inverted commas. This is the most condemnable fake news because she never spoke to me about that, and I've said that hundreds of times. She spoke about some Pakistani woman journalist. So what I'm saying is that look at what was happening, that, a woman who's dead, that this kind of fake news, this jiggery-pokery was going on. Thank you. And I'll just end with, why is fake news prospering in our country? I think for 4 reasons. Research will tell you. When there is majoritarianism, when there is, when you have institutions being corroded, when you have authoritarianism, and when you have vigilantism, and institutions get corroded, the media is getting corroded. So ladies and gentlemen, we have this, and don't forget, Americans are setting our headlines because you are going for Facebook and for Twitter. And Facebook
Okay,
says,
Nalini, wrap it up.
Thank you. I'm wrapping it up, just saying that do not go for this thing that fake news doesn't exist. It exists and is going to live forever, I think, if we don't do anything drastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nalini Singh. I'd imagine when you, the Calcutta Club audience or the perceived Calcutta Club audience is used to listening to the 4 Ps of marketing, promotion, placement. But today at this debate, Nalini gave the Calcutta Club different 4 Ps, the 4 Ps of fake news. And I'm using only words which you used in your speech. Pokery, jiggery pokery, that's a statement I've heard of for a long time. You use porn at the Calcutta Club. You use the word playboy, very nice. We're all enjoying it. And you also use the word pig. No, that's a little in-house Bengali joke. Amra four bolte pari na to. Tai film, football, fish, and pig. All right. And now we go truly international. Senior journalist with the BBC, and wonderful to have you here in Calcutta. And after you finish, maybe in the evening, we'll give you a few tips as to which of the places you should visit or not visit, okay? Please welcome Jeffrey Bryan.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Byrne to oppose the motion.
Yes, it's an honor to be here, particularly with so many wonderful speakers. Now, we did hear from Nalili that there's an insatiable demand for fake news at the moment. Really? You could have fooled me. I think there's an insatiable demand for real news, particularly among young people who are fed up being lied to. I hate fake news. I've got to be honest with you. There's a confession. I hate fake bread, fake beer, fake news. I love real bread, real beer, real news written by real journalists, unafraid to seek the truth and root out corruption and give a voice to the dispossessed. And what are citizen journalists, by the way? What's that about? My plane wasn't flown over here from London by a citizen airline pilot. My washing machine wasn't mended last week by a citizen plumber. He was a professional, and I want professional journalists. I think every civilized society has a right to certain things: shelter, warmth, protection for children, but also, I believe, the right to a transparent and independent news service. Otherwise, what have we got left? George Orwell, 1984, where the Ministry of Truth feeds you lies. You remember when Goebbels was appointed propaganda minister by Hitler way back? He said, if I tell a big lie enough times, enough people will believe it for it to become the truth. Well, that's not true. It's still a lie. The good news is that fascism was defeated, and fake news will also be defeated. More good news. Germany, it says it's going to introduce fines of up to 50 million euros for Google and Facebook and Twitter if they don't take down fake news sites very quickly after they've been pointed out. France may do the same. The hashtag Twitter lockout was trending this week after a number of sites were shut down. This was after Robert Mueller in the United States said he was going to investigate several fake websites in Russia which were trying to undermine US democracy. Now, Jonathan Swift, a wonderful Irish writer from the 18th century, said it very well, that when falsehood flies away, truth limps in, but the jest is over and the tale has been told. In other words, once you throw mud, it can stick. Now, Craig Silverman of BuzzFeed put it more succinctly, more recently. He said there's a chain reaction. Somebody creates a fake website, false story. Out it goes. Somebody else sees it, reposts it, without any reference to the original source. And then what happens? Somebody at a reputable news website is asked to do just one more story at the end of a long day. They look at what's trending, they put it out, and there it is. It must be true. It's out there. Well, it isn't. It's still a lie. It's still false news. Now, Nick Davies of The Guardian in London wrote an interesting book recently called Flat Earth News. And in it, he asked journalists like myself to start doing more work, to stop just churning out press releases that we get from corporations and governments, and do more original work. He said, we're not churnalists, we are journalists. And he's got a point. Sometimes it's difficult to tell whether you're reading real news or fake news. I read this week that the 10 rupee coin is no longer legal tender in India. Well, it is. That's fake news. I read this week that white people going to watch the new movie, Black Panther, are being beaten up in cinemas. They're not. That's fake news. I read that KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, ran out of chicken across its outlets in England. Now that's true. That really did happen. Unbelievable, but true. I took my daughters down for a KFC on Wednesday. It was shut. We got a very nice Indian curry instead. Now, more good news. Idealism lives in many journalists and in many of the younger readers that they have. When I started out way back, All the President's Men had just come out. Washington Post, Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward had written about the Watergate break-in and how the trail led to Richard Nixon in the White House, and he had to resign the presidency. Well, what about now? What about now? New York Times membership is up among young people. Washington Post membership up among young people. If you read Michael Wolff's new book, Fire and Fury, about Donald Trump, we've already heard from, Donald Trump's first few months in office, his media team have constantly tried to hoodwink the public. Sean Spicer said, oh, the attendance at the inauguration ceremony was the largest in US history, period. Well, it wasn't. And photographic evidence was soon shown to prove he was wrong. He was lying. That was fake news. And what about the Brexit bus, Boris Johnson's Brexit bus, which travelled England during the very bitter campaign to see whether the UK would stay within the European Union? Blasted on the side of the bus, it said, "We pay the European Union £350 million a week." Well, journalistic investigations showed that that wasn't true. It was fake news. Now, the BBC gets accused of being slow. Well, it says it would rather be accurate than fast. And here's an example. In 2005, a terrorist attack in London killed 52 people. The BBC didn't say it was a terror attack until it was confirmed that it was, and it wasn't electrical outage. They were accused of being too slow. Now, fast forward to a few weeks ago, Oxford Circus tube station, some outlets are reporting a terror attack, a gunman on the loose, a lorry mounting the pavement and killing civilians, pedestrians. The BBC waited, checked out the facts, which was, quite simply, that two people had had a fight on the platform, panic had spread, rumours had spread. There was no gunman, there was no terror attack. And the BBC simply produced the unvarnished truth. Now, if you go onto the BBC News website, you'll see a link to the BBC's editorial guidelines. Now, these have been taken up by lots of independent news organisations around the world. Since 1922, when it was founded, it's tried to be fair, independent, impartial, respect its audience and not try and deceive them like so many people do in an era of fake news. And what about poor Sylvester Stallone this week, a Rambo style, reading that he died, cruel hoax? He said, no, I'm fighting. I'm not dead, I'm fighting. Well, Real News is fighting too. And when Mark Twain read his obituary, he said, hey, reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. Well, reports of the death of Real News are also greatly exaggerated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. I don't know about genuine news and fake news, but I do know we have a situation today when a genuine Irishman has spoken, and his name is Jeffrey Byrne. And I do know the next speaker is also, who I will introduce, a genuine Irishman. But in the middle of all them is a fake Irishman. Bangali chele Jamir Linen, Naam O'Brien. Great grandfather was Irish. Kokhono jaini okhane. Jai hok. So, please welcome Sean Dolan. Sean Dolan is here. You can give a little loud of applause, Calcutta. He's an accomplished debater, currently coaches the prestigious Harrow School in the UK, and campaign manager for the peace-building NGO Conscience. Sean, all set to go.
Right, thank you very much. I want to start by giving a heartfelt thank you to the Calcutta Debating Circle for inviting me along this evening. My mother actually lived in Pune in India for a number of years, and it always felt like a home that I'd never been able to visit. And I'd like to thank Kunal in particular, but the Calcutta Debating Circle as well, for giving me the opportunity to come home for the first time. So thank you. Now, that's probably the nicest thing I'm going to say about Kunal tonight. because he laid down a challenge for me, and he said that, look at what's happening with Brexit. There's all this confusion that's happened around Brexit, and fake news is responsible for that. Well, first of all, I'm a debate coach at Harrow, and the author of Brexit, Boris Johnson, is from Eton, so I can't take responsibility for him. But I'm going to put it to Kunal that he's part of the problem, because the problem with Brexit is that it divided people. Now, I passionately believe that we should have no Brexit, and there's a discussion in Britain about whether we should have a hard Brexit or soft Brexit or no Brexit at all. But we need to have a conversation about what the best way forward is. And if what we do is we label our opponents as people who consume lies and people who don't understand how the work works, then we can't have that conversation to make sure that Brexit doesn't happen in the first place. We need to reach out, we need to embrace debate and dissent in order to get to the truth, and just labeling things as fake news or people as consumers of fake news does not help us get to where we need to be. The other thing that was leveled is that combating fake news is actually key to preserving our democracy. This is something that both Jeffrey and Kunal looked at in different ways. And I put it to you that there is no democracy without fake news, because fake news is the freedom to put forward an opinion. And Jeffrey actually put forward the example of Nazi Germany. I can assure you there was no fake news in Nazi Germany because the government made sure that there was no fake news in Nazi Germany. And that's not particularly the world that I want to live in. So I want to talk to you tonight, I want you to persuade you that fake news is actually the price that we pay to live in a free society. Now, I understand that there are new challenges that we face. It's really easy to become a journalist now. It's really easy to print stuff, put it online. It's never been cheaper to record something. So that creates new challenges. But that doesn't mean that we should give that power either to the government to decide what truth is, or to corporate interests who will decide what truth is. We have to understand that a little bit of fake news is just the price we pay to have a healthy debate in this country. Now, Britain itself was a bit of a pioneer in fake news. In 1835, a guy called John Herschel actually traveled to the moon. And when he traveled to the moon, he found that there were lakes, there were animals, and there were trees. And there was apparently a race of bat people that were very, very sexually voracious. Now, this is completely fake news, but it's not something that's designed to harm people. How we react to the new fake news landscape is particularly important in India, because as the world's largest democracy, that is a tremendous privilege, but it is also a tremendous responsibility. And the democratic norms in India become the international democratic norms of tomorrow. So if we are to live in a society that embraces freedom and discourse and debate, we have to allow a little bit of fake news, and we need to make sure that we get that right. Now, what this debate really is about, it's not really about news. It's not even really about the media. It's about power and who decides what truth is. Now, it might be reassuring to think that a government agency can decide what truth is, but Jeffrey seems already afraid of that happening, the Ministry for Truth argument. So we have to have a think about what a world without fake news actually looks like. And I'll give you a clue, it's already happening, and it's happening in America. Now, Donald Trump is a bit of a demon with a very dodgy orange spray tan, and someone who frankly terrifies me. But in January, he ran something very interesting. It was called the Fake News Awards. And the person who won the gold medal at the Fake News Olympics was a guy called Paul Krugman. Now, Paul Krugman is a Nobel Prize-winning professor of economics, and he wrote a piece for the New York Times that suggested that Trump's economic policies are perhaps not the best ones for the United States. Now, Trump has labeled this fake news. It got #1 at the Fake News Olympics. But here's the thing. This is not fake news. Paul Krugman had an opinion. And I know it was an opinion because it was in the opinion section of the newspaper under a banner that said, "This is opinion." What Donald Trump is trying to do is he's trying to blur the lines between news and opinion and use the banner of fake news to bully people, because he wants to create a world in which his own alternative facts are king. They're the reality that we create. And we need to be aware that fake news and labeling things as fake news is not an expression of freedom, but he's using it as an expression to shut down debate. And what we should do by allowing fake news, we're actually allowing debates to happen in the first place. By the way, he called the New York Times the failing New York Times, and as Jeffrey rightly said, it now has a record number of subscribers as a response to that. So it seems like the best way for people to get to the truth is to allow people like Donald Trump to peddle fake news, because citizens are actually smarter than that. They can understand when they're being lied to and engage with real news. But the thing that really scares me about Donald Trump's obsession with fake news is that it's more than just riling a few journalists now. This obsession is starting to feed into policy, because the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States is now not allowed to use the word climate change. Now, why has that been allowed to happen? Because it is an agency that is responsible for dealing with climate change. It's responsible with preventing climate change. So why has it been banned from talking about climate change? Because Donald Trump thinks that climate change is fake news, that it was a conspiracy theory peddled by the Chinese government in order to undermine manufacturing. Now, Donald Trump is apparently the biggest opponent in the world of fake news, and that's what makes me a supporter of it, because I'm very afraid that the agenda of fake news and the reaction to it is not being driven by consumer groups, it's not being driven by journalists, it's not being driven by you, the citizens, but it's being used by the powerful to silence dissent. And we're seeing that with Bashar al-Assad, Nicolas Maduro, and Donald Trump, and around the world. Now, friends and comrades, a society without fake news is a society without dissent, a society without debate, and it's a society where truth is decided by either authoritarian leaders or corporate interests. That is not a world I want to live in. So I say, long live freedom and long live fake news.
Right. Thank you, Sean. Sean bringing in two new perspectives into this debate at this stage. One, of course, is beyond news and media. He brought in the perspective of power and giving the example of climate change. I don't know whether that was a full toss, which will be a hit for a 6, the comment about there was no fake news during the time of Nazi Germany. Nevertheless, we get on to the third speaker. Now, I hosted a small TV show. She was a star from a very, very big TV show. Today, we are colleagues in the Rajya Sabha. We have different political ideologies. We are political rivals. We're not political enemies. Please welcome Rupa Ganguly.
Good evening, friends. I'm here to participate in this debate and speaking against the motion. I would like to apologize in the very beginning that I'm neither a good orator nor a debater, nor quite eloquent in English, the language. I'm really honored to be able to participate here. Thank you, Doctor. And I will sometimes switch on to Hindi and Bangla, of course. আমি বাংলার মাটিতে দাঁড়িয়ে কথা বলছি তো একটু বাংলাতে বলতে নিশ্চয়ই ইচ্ছে করবে পারবো হয়তো দেখি চেষ্টা করব I really don't know. News is something which we may also call a noteworthy information. What we gather from various medias like print media, electronic media, Twitter, social media, everywhere, portals, etc. Actually, what we hear is what we want to hear. It's very clear. We only hear what pleases our ears, and we only listen to we only listen to those which pleases our ears, our eyes, or our souls. And we only focus or look for or even search for the items which would make us happy, which would support our belief. আমরা বলবো দারুণ, এটা আমার জন্য দারুণ একটা খবর, great news, good news. That will make me happy. But what has been a practice that whatever displeases us, we choose to dismiss them by saying it's fake. See, a story always had, has, and will have two sides. Always. So, I would like to mention about something which not too many people will like it. Attention deficit readers is a term which I would like to mention, that we, the attention deficit readers, must start to point fingers at ourselves. Whereas social media feeds tend to constitute our reality. Do we really have the time to go to the core of the story? We just get excited. See, oh, this मेरे साथ मिल रहा है, इसको forward कर देते, सोच लेते, अरे यही हुआ होगा. वो हमको खुश कर देता है. क्यों नहीं हम उसके गौर तक जाते हैं, आखिरी नोट तक जाते हैं. जाना जरूरी है. आज के लिए, आज के तारीख में जब हम बायस्ड रीडर देखते हैं तो वो उनके नापसंद के न्यूज़ को फेक कह देते हैं. See, today is a fast-paced world and we are politically aware and should rightly be so. For example, कुछ दिन पहले there was a very sad incident has happened at Daulatabad, Murshidabad, West Bengal. A North Bengal State Transport Corporation bus with 36 passengers or so crashed at a concrete railing of a bridge, lost control, got drowned into a lake. Eyewitnesses थे वहाँ पे. सब ने बोला कि सब लेट आए. वहाँ पे कुछ लोग थे. There's one gentleman, Horipodo, fisherman. He was startled. He left everything. And he jumped out of his boat and then tried to help people. So, there were people agitated, waiting for help. So something must have happened. People got angry. They were waiting for cranes. Cranes arrived at 1:30. So national, disaster team management and state disaster management group, they've arrived very late. And next day, from next day onwards, the news completely turned in the favor of our Honorable Chief Minister. I know. Honorable Chief Minister saying she is looking after everything. It is very, very correct. It is very, very correct. Shall I mention that National Disaster Management Team, they have a fund, they have a corpus, which has 75% contribution of the central government, handled by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And ये जो हमारा जो National Disaster Response Team काम करते हैं, वो सिर्फ डिस्ट्रिक्ट में कलेक्टर के नियम के अनुसार, निर्देश के अनुसार काम करते हैं. Shall we all start blaming each other? No. We can also say, save life. No, save drive, save life. It's very confusing. We can all say that it is not working. But will it actually work? If people go there and create ruckus and disturb the rescue team? It will not. See, I'm a BJP political activist. I was always a social worker. Now I've joined a political party. I'm ruling in the center, I'm in opposition in the state. But, इसको क्या हमको न्यूज़ को कितना आगे बढ़ाना चाहिए? न्यूज़ को लेकर हंगामा करना चाहिए और इसको सेव करने के लिए, हेल्प करने की कोशिश करना चाहिए. सही बात है, करोड़ों रुपया खर्चा हुआ है एडवर्टाइजमेंट में सीएम के फोटोग्राफ के साथ, सेव लाइफ, सेव ड्राइव, सेव लाइफ, सेव ड्राइव. कोई बात नहीं है, खर्चा हुआ है, उसमें कोई बात नहीं है. Now it is the need of the hour that we save the people. And I will not call them fake news. I will not. Because every time every time. You keep an eye on the news medias or channels or whoever who's not talking in favor of you or who do not speak words or give informations which informations do not please you. One should always keep a track on those informations, those news channels, those print medias. Why? That would help you to grow. That will help us to, be grounded, remain grounded. आज अगर हम अपने पसंद का नहीं आया उसको फेक बोल देते तो दुनिया में हजारों चीज फेक लगेगा. ऐसे बहुत सारे जर्नलिस्ट थे जो 2015 में बहुत बुरी तरह हर्ट हुए थे. क्या उस वक्त जो टीवी चैनल सारे लोगों ने दिखाया क्या वो फेक था? आज भी वो घटना घट रही है. आज वो टीवी पे दिखते नहीं है, वो फर्स्ट पेज सेकंड पेज में आते न्यूज में नहीं है. क्या वो फेक है? फेक नहीं है. कुछ टाइम में कुछ चीजें कुछ ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है,
Rupa,
नहीं होता.
you're at 8 minutes.
Yeah. I finished, no? Oh, yeah. So, for us, readers, and as a person from the society, I would only I would request our people, and through you, to everybody whoever is listening to this, हम अपने शिक्षा व्यवस्था को अच्छे से तैयार करें. हम लोगों को इतना तक समझाएं. 70 साल में बहुत सारा कुछ नहीं होगा, बहुत सारा कुछ होगा. लेकिन शिक्षा व्यवस्था को इतना आगे ले जाएं कि लोग समझ जाएं कौन सा फेक हो सकता है. लेकिन मैं इतना बताना
Now
चाहूंगी.
9 minutes.
ओके, आई एम सॉरी. हमारी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि हम और थोड़ा पढ़ें, जगत को पढ़ाएं और हमेशा उन्हीं पे लगे रहे जो हमारे खिलाफ बोलते हैं. उसको हम फेक न्यूज़ नहीं बोलेंगे, उसका हम सम्मान करेंगे. थैंक यू.
Right. I was obviously, or rather, generous with the time for obvious reasons. And I also have to be gracious this evening for various reasons. Even though there may be fake news from this side, there may be fake news from this side, but I shall make no comment. You're a very intelligent audience. You can either indulge in a world-level boxing match, and you could also indulge in a little local scrap. So you make your own decisions. You've heard all the speakers. In fact, you are going to hear the next speaker here. Here we go. This is for the motion, right? For the motion, we have, this is an easy gentleman to introduce. Wait. একটু ভালো করে introduction টা করি. আমরা একই ক্লাসে পড়তাম. And same class, in same class. And I was always in the back bench. And this guy would get into depression because whenever he came second in a subject, because, he'd come first in English 1, English 2, Math 1, Math 2, Physics 1, Physics 2, Chemistry 1, Chemistry 2, something. And once in a way, I would beat him in elocution or a debate. That's it, okay? We've been in touch even after so many years being in school. Please welcome full-time neurosurgeon, but passionate debater, my old friend, Dr. Shandeep Chatterjee.
Mr. Chairman, sir, Madam Rupa Ganguly was introduced as being of Draupadi fame, and I thought for a moment that her speech was going to be like Draupadi's dress. It wasn't coming to an end. I hope you will bestow the same amount of graciousness upon me and my teammates as you do upon your political opponents, obviously, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, the deliberate declaration of a definitive death is best done by a doctor. As I pronounce the sad demise of true news, as members of the Calcutta Club have understood the word news since 1907 when this club was founded. But of course, no death in this state occurs except due to a doctor's negligence. And so, the successor of this patient who has died, that is news, is best called doctored news, the other word for fake news or yellow journalism, as we know today. News, Mr. Chairman, sir, was never absolute. And it is not our contention from this side of the floor to tell you that. Information was absolute. Information is what we always perceived through our sense of vision or our sense of hearing, either in the media or in the visual medium or more recently in the electronic medium. But what we perceive is the news. The organ of perception which lets us think what is news is not our vision, not our ears, it's our brain. And believe me or not, I know a thing or two about this organ. The human brain is a strange organ. It likes to see the world in the way it would like to view the world. And I start off again with a statement by Honorable Rupa Ganguly. She said, "We hear what we want to hear." That is exactly our contention from this side of the floor. It is because we want to hear what we hear only what we want to hear, that news, which is not always what we want to hear, is now being substituted by fake news, which gives us what we want to hear. And that is what we want to tell you from this side of the floor. You know, Jeffrey Byrne came up and said, "I like real bread. I like real beer." For a moment, I thought he was going to advertise for the Calcutta Club. But I would like to tell him something he doesn't know, that you and I know and are horrified about. And that is, this club has featured on print medium 4 times in the last 2 years. All 4 events have been to show this club in a poor light, either as sexist or as unethical, or even as being, in many ways, looking down upon the downtrodden. This has been the coverage of this club in the last 2 years. 4 times this club was covered in the news. But does that mean you and I, members of this August Club, are really representing those 4 events? Does it mean none of us do anything good simply because the news medium never portrays anything good that the members of the Calcutta Club does? I am sure you will agree that's not the case. But the truth is, if you say a member of the Calcutta Club has become a member of Parliament, that will not sell. If you say a member of the Calcutta Club has had an achievement in the field of literature or economics, that will not sell. But if you say a member of the Calcutta Club has complained against another member of the Calcutta Club, that makes headlines, that sells, and that's our contention from this side of the floor. And as members of the Calcutta Club, I'm sure all of you will appreciate why I say news is dead and long live fake news. Dr. Kunal Sarkar, my friend, came to tell us that, in fact, if you want to know what's happened, you have to see Cyrus's program the week that wasn't. That itself is what we're trying to tell you. If you want to know what's happened, you have to look at fake news today. You know, there was a village a little away from Calcutta where some people stole a hen from somebody's house. Those people went out and assaulted the thief. We had one group of media that reported the BJP had set up a method of terrorizing people of that village. We had another group of media that said that Trinamool has been unable to control social unrest in this city. And there was a third media that said communal harmony is lost in West Bengal. Imagine if the media had written 2 chickens were stolen from a villager. Would you have read that? Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, it is our humble contention from this side of the floor that real news no longer sells. It doesn't appeal. It doesn't travel through social media at half the speed that fake news travels. Real news is not something we want to read. Real news is thrust upon us. Fake news is something that we want to read. So if somebody told you, you can open an account in the Punjab National Bank today, you would say that's news. Okay, so what? But if somebody told you that the auditors of the Punjab National Bank are now in much demand in Bengal and rest of the country to audit various firms, then that would sound very appealing, but that would be fake news. You'd read it. The truth is, I often wonder that those that write these news, whether in electronic media or in social media or in print media, do they not understand that what they're writing is wrong? But the truth is also that these people that write have a job. They have a job to report to the editor and please him. The editor has a job to please the ruler of that particular media or newspaper. And in this world, as we've heard, we live in a world of autocratic arrogance of democracy, both in this center and in this state. And the media cannot afford to oppose the rulers in power and still be a sustainable media. That is why today news is dead and gone, and fake news is its substitute, which we are all thriving on. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Shondeep. Thank you very much also for wrapping it up on time. And doctors, whoever says doctors are not sharp marketeers, he knows about 70-75%, my guess is maybe 60-70% of this audience must be members of Calcutta Club, maybe 60-70, and he pitched it right there. Clever boy. All right. We now get across to opposing this motion, and as she walks up, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you academic and public speaker, Graduate University of Maryland, PhD from the University of Bristol, UK, currently associated with the international, I haven't finished, a few more lines. Currently associated with the International Center at the University of Bedfordshire, and focus area is child protection. Okay, wonderful to have you in Calcutta, and we hope you have you and our other visitors, including Khurshid Saab and Nalini, on behalf of all of us in Calcutta, please enjoy our city.
Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here. There may be confusion, am I from the UK, am I from the US? I've been living in the UK for quite some time, 20 years, but I guess I am representing the US today. So thank you for welcoming me from the land of fake news. I can guarantee that this will be the best speech you've ever heard. Guarantee it. Of course we know, and I think we can agree, that misinformation has been shared since the beginning of time. Across before the printing presses and even after the printing presses. And we can acknowledge, however, that we are in a new era where fake news is being mass distributed to a degree that we've never seen or experienced before because of the advances of technology. And also we're seeing those more sinister elements of people who wish to manipulate our views and change our minds and shift the course of history. Now, my colleagues, esteemed colleagues over here, I think, have a very, very poor perception of human resilience and adaptability. And this is something that I'll be focusing on, perhaps unsurprisingly, because I'm a social scientist. I'm not going to focus on the power at the top. I'd like to focus on the power of people and their ability to change. And I think we can't generalize about what people want to hear or do not want to hear. So I think we need to think about and listen to and understand what the people are doing. I'm going to make 3 key points here in relation to this. First, it's to address that moral panic and the hysteria that people are being duped into reading what they want to hear, that people can't tell the difference anymore between fake news and real news. But I think this is inaccurate, and I think it's generalizing, and I think it's, again, a depressing view of the human condition. The second point I will address is about the evidence emerging that people want access to trusted organizations, and they will adapt and they will get it. The third point is related to this, and that people want access to news from diverse sources. I mean, we know that more and more people are getting their news on social media, but they also want access to news from other sources as well, and they will adapt to get it, and organizations will adapt to provide for that demand. To my first point, not everybody is as susceptible to fake news as others. There's been recent high-quality research from Stanford University that has come out in response to the 2016 election. These researchers were looking at different characteristics of people who bought into fake news, more susceptible to fake news, and they found that there are differences. Not everyone buys into fake news as easily as others. For example, they found some evidence that having higher education levels prepares people to be more critical and have analytical skills to be able to at least think about whether this piece of news in front of them is fake, and looking for information in different places. Also, this research and some other related research has also found that even when people do potentially sometimes hit a fake news link and believe it, when they're presented with corrected information, that they can actually change their impressions. So this flies in the face of these arguments that people want to hear what they want to hear, or that all people want to hear what they want to hear, and that they're not going to change that. So I think we need to not generalize about human beings and realize that there are differences. And I'm not trying here to disparage people without education or without good analytic skills. Quite the opposite. I think learning from people who are able to tell the difference, or at least consider the differences and be critical about fake news, have a lot to teach us. And I think we can improve interventions for better information literacy. So this is something changeable, I think. We can do this. To my second point about people wanting access to trusted sources. We know that subscriptions to New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New Yorker have actually skyrocketed since 2016, just in the immediate prior time and afterwards. So they're seeing increased subscriptions to traditional news media organizations. What's really most interesting and really most hopeful for me is that there's evidence that the largest growing majority of those subscriptions are from young people themselves who are fed up with the news and the lies they were given during that election. And this gives me a lot of hope that young people are going to keep fighting the fight to hear truth and not fake news. The final point is around people wanting access to diverse sources. This will help us combat fake news. So again, as we know that lots of people are getting their news from social media, but it's not just social media that they're seeking that news from. As we saw, they're also wanting direct access from news organizations themselves. And so they're getting potentially their news from multiple sources. We still have TV, we still have radio. News organizations are adapting by sending out links to your phone, alerts with news. So there's lots of different ways people are getting their news now. Some of the research from Stanford also looked at the web traffic. They compared the web traffic on traditional news websites as well as fake news websites. The web traffic, the largest percent of web traffic on traditional news websites was direct access, people coming to the website and searching for information. In contrast to much lower numbers of people coming to fake news websites directly, the majority of that traffic comes from clicking on fake news links and then being referred to websites that way. Although, I've drawn on much of the evidence here from the US, because we're seeing these worrying trends about people in power or people seeking to change the course of history and change people's minds. These are messages for the entire...
8 minutes up.
Thank you. These are messages for everyone. My message is one of hope for humankind, of adaptation and resilience by both people reading the news themselves and the organizations there to serve them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much. The big point made there, of course, is about branded content with good brands against unbranded content, and how obviously the branded content, the authentic content is more believable. Okay. To be fair to this side, totally we've calculated, so we've given about 3 or 4 minutes extra here. 3 minutes. So, yeah, so you have about 2-3 minutes. You can either take it with your last speaker or you can reserve that for the summing up. Right. The last speaker for the motion is an academic in astrophysics, and I wrote out his introduction, and then he said, "No, Derek, I don't like the introduction, so this is the one we agreed on." An out-of-work actor, Cyrus Brocha.
Please don't clap. I haven't even spoken yet. It's ridiculous. All right. Just want to say, can I speak from here?
Well,
because that is leaning to the left and that is to the right, and I'm not comfortable. So I want to stay in the middle, if you don't mind. All right, audience. First, I want to apologize. I cannot last 7 minutes. I do 2 minutes. You can ask my wife or a couple of members' wives at the back. 2 minutes is what I do, all right? No 7 minutes. Hey, who talks for 7 minutes?
No, carry on.
Bloody politicians talk for 7 minutes. We can't do 7 minutes. People are tired, backs are paining, many people over 50. We have 2 doctors here who can help, so don't worry. Yeah? All right, I just want to quickly, big round of applause to our opponents. They were fantastic. Dr. Kunal was like a modern Cicero, except Cicero had long hair and spoke in Latin and didn't do medicine. But give him a big hand. Well done. Jeff was like Ralph Waldo Emerson. Every word was beautiful. I almost had an orgasm listening. It was fabulous. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, big hand. And Debbie, contradicting Rupali, who says, who says that we want the news that we want to hear. She says it's not true. I'm very confused. WhatsApp each other, get that right. Swapan, I don't want to get personal, but one side of your chest is leaking. Is it menopause, male menopause? I have no idea. But we got to get this debate moving on. Somebody has to talk about the elephant in the room. Nobody has spoken about the elephant in the bloody room. And let me tell you, to be more accurate, it's a rhino, because where he comes from, it's more rhino than elephant country. Who am I talking about? Arnab Goswami! Ladies and gentlemen, news is dead. And it died the day he came on and did his first broadcast and said something ridiculous like, the nation wants to know. Which nation was he talking about? Myanmar? Republic of Congo? This wonderful human being has destroyed news and all our channels have followed suit. Am I wrong? Please tell me. Am I wrong? 2 words in Assamese, Arnab Goswami. That has destroyed news across 7 or 8 countries that also have our news for some reason because of budget issues. So I just want to tell you, the elephant in the room has to be addressed. This is a man who single-handedly has done more to give us fake news than anybody else. But we love him. He himself says his ratings are through the roof. 7 billion people watch his show. That's the last number I read. That's more than the entire world. 7 billion, according to Arnab Goswami, which is fake news. So long live Arnab Goswami, long live fake news. Thanks to him, we have this entire sphere of news, and now anything goes. But I've been thinking, we're in a society where there's disparity in spite of all the governments that we've had. I have a lot of respect for TMC and BJP. That's fake news. And I'm sorry, Derek. I better not tell him which hotel I'm in. Oh, God. Yeah, but you know, it's just a fabulous, fabulous world we live in. Disparity in income all over the country. Casteism, communalism, all kinds of prejudices, problems, you know, burnings, beatings, rape, molestation, sexism, everything goes. So I think, how do we survive this? How do we survive this in the world we live in? Donald Trump is showing us the way. Just make things up so the world seems better. I mean, is that wrong? Look at the service Arnab is doing to us. For according to his gospel, there are only 4 problems in India. One is the Congress. One is Lutyens Delhi. That's number 2, rather. The third is Shashi Tharoor. And the 4th is Pakistan. That's his gospel. He just rotates them. All right, that's all he has to do. If there's a leakage in Salt Lake Stadium, he blames Pakistan. It makes sense. Somebody in Karachi has done it. Yeah? And when there's nothing else to do, Shashi Tharoor is the biggest criminal the world has ever seen because he may be a womanizer at worst. Oops. Huge. Execute him in public. All right. Lutyens Delhi. What's his problem with Lutyens Delhi? He earns over 10 crores a year. He is Lutyens Delhi. You can't be a leftist and have a fancy car. It doesn't work. Somebody, oh, I'm in Bengal. I shouldn't mention that. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing. It just goes on and on. Fake news is what keeps us going. I'm asking you to answer the question, what do you want? We live in a world of fake breasts, fake nose, fake notes, which are still doing the rounds after demonetization, which is supposed to change the world but hasn't. All right? We have fake LOUs, as you saw in the case with Nirav Modi. We have fake undertakings. We have fake statements. We're still waiting for Achhe Din. Achhe Din was supposed to come in, not clear on which date. Tuesday. They've not given the date, but it's a Tuesday. It's coming on Tuesday. All right? Everything is fake. So I'm asking you as an audience, what do you want? You want to see the truth? You want to see nuclear proliferation? You want to see war? You want to see refugees all over Calcutta? You want to see blood? You want to see civil unrest? You want to see disharmony? Or let's see what Arnab sees, which is Pakistan may have attacked somebody somewhere and we need to go to war tomorrow at 3:30 in the afternoon, but not interrupt his bulletin at 9. Then we have to take a break at that point. India, Pakistan both watch Arnab's news show. All right? So are you with me? It's fake news. Zindabad. Please scream it out. Fake news. Come on, audience. Come on, fake news. Fake news. What a beautiful audience. So we've understood this. The debate is over. We can close it right here. I want to end with a story that I read, and you can Google it. A very famous Dr. Ryan Harris, who was from Harvard in the 70s, and he had performed some sort of experiment with people where he took 20 people or 25 people and had them believe that Vietnam War was over, and then got their sort of results in terms of happiness and how they felt. And everybody felt really good about it. And the other test group, which was told that the war would continue, felt very depressed. All right? So this was his way of trying to conduct and figure out a happiness quotient amongst people. What do you think? What do you think the result of those tests was? Audience, don't go to sleep on me. Everybody was depressed. Whether the war started or whether the war ended, everybody was depressed. Now let me explain to you. I just made up that story. There's no Dr. Ryan Harris and there was no such experiment. I just want to have some fun and make up a stupid comment in a stupid experiment which actually has no sense to it. And you listen to me because you want fake news. All right? So I give to you fake news, the future of the world. The world sucks. We are beyond cynicism. Accept the fact. Long live fake news. Thanks for coming. Join this side. We welcome you. Cheers.
Right. Thank you, Cyrus. India's original funny man. You know, to be funny, you also need content. And it all looks very easy, but it's so wonderful to listen to a funny man and, you know, be engaged. And the funny man is Arnab. Okay. The funny man also told us that Cicero spoke in Latin, but actually Greek, but doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay. This is set up very nicely. You've heard nine of the 10 speakers. 9 of the 10 speakers. And now for the 10th speaker. Here we go. Senior journalist, my colleague in the Rajya Sabha, and well-known columnist. And he was speaking here 2 weeks ago. Welcome back. I can't welcome him to Calcutta because Kolkata ri chele. Shapon Dasgupta.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you for reminding us something which I needed to be told, that to be a funny man, you don't really need content. I think what we experienced just now is remarkable. Remarkable in terms of what news has become. It has become entertainment. We always knew there was an entertaining facet of it. Now we know it. But before I come to that, let me talk about the poll which should determine, which should settle, rather than the histrionics, which should settle the outcome of this debate. 65-35. That's what your poll says.
The Calcutta Club poll.
Your poll says 65. It reminds me of opinion polls. There is a difference between an opinion poll and the votes of those who actually vote. And I think it's important to recognize that, because does one constitute fake news? Is opinion poll a series of fake news? That's a question we need to ask. I'm at least glad that Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, using his considerable medical expertise, has finally definitively said that news is dead. It's not in ICU, it's not in coma, it's not sort of half alive, but it's dead, which means it was alive. And I don't know exactly, normally, when the king dies, we say, oh, the queen is dead, long live the king, or the king is dead, long live the king. So there is always a time span. We don't know when this golden age of news died and when the dark age of fake news began. We heard an example for some of us. If Sean is to be believed, it began with an evil man called Donald Trump getting in. If someone else is to be believed, it happened when Brexit started. We are still confused exactly when it happened. A lot of you may have seen Satyajit Ray's film Oshani Sanket. There's a very nice scene there. One gentleman reading the newspapers in a very somber fashion remarks there, I read that Singapore has fallen circa World War II. An ignorant man sitting on his feet comes up and said, Sir, is Singapore ta kothai? Where is Singapore? And the man answers very somberly, very knowingly, এই যে মেদিনীপুরের পাশে, next to Midnapur. Now, if that is to be believed, that is an early example, and since we all attach, profound meanings to what Satyajit Ray said, depicted, we would say, oh, that's an early depiction of fake news. The point is very simple, that pure news, in that sense, never existed. News was always colored by perception, by what you thought was real. If you go back to Indian history in the 1920s, you will find that in Chota Nagpur, there was a rebellion around the time of Gandhi's non-cooperation movement, where a large number of Adivasis rose up and said that there is someone called the Kaiser Baba who is going to come and liberate India. It was talking about the Kaiser in Germany. Gandhi Maharaj was also given supernatural powers in the realm of perception. Fake news? Were these people sinister? Was there something called fake news then? Or was the fact that perception and news all got blended together, that there was no such thing as a golden age of news? But at least Dr. Chatterjee has pronounced it dead. And he has pronounced it dead and the advent of the evil institution called fake news. And why? I think Nalini Singh asked a very important question and said, the real problem is, who decides? And she gave an example and said, there were 4 judges squabbling amongst each other. And instead, people said, but why did one CPI leader go and meet one of the judges through the back door? Now, I am looking straight ahead. Or the front door? Okay, I stand corrected. Maybe that was front door. Now, I am looking ahead. At one level, I think it's Dana Bank. But Nalini Singh chooses to look at Rum has a new captain. Is she lying? Am I lying? Who is there? The bell may have gone. That's the point. When I was in Britain, or in Britain in 2000, during the time of the Brexit referendum, everyone said, oh, we don't know a soul who's going to vote for Brexit. And these were reporters. These were weighty journalists. We don't know. Likewise, I'm sure Sean came across in the United States a lot of people who said, I don't know a soul who's going to vote Donald Trump. But people did, and they were proved wrong. So hence, fake news. Why did you win? Fake news. You can't admit you're wrong, so you create an artificial construct called fake news. The same thing happened here in 2014. We had foreign journalists descend and said, we don't know any English-speaking people who are going to vote for Modi, so we'll talk to you. That's again the same thing, a perception. The same mockery of Achhe Din coming on Tuesday, actually it'll coming on a Wednesday. Because you won't be on air that day. You are the holy man. I think that's really the issue. The contrived notion of what constitutes fake news. There has always been a huge jumble in this world. But you've decided that there is something which we don't control. Because there is someone in the social media who's controlling it. You no longer have the levers of control. So you announce it, that this is a new, bad, dark ages. This is tantamount to the Inquisition, and therefore this has to be decried. You know, I was reading a thing in the Spectator today, and they said, what happens to people? And this is what we heard Kunal talk about, the hyperbolic exaggeration of the proposition. What happens to people who overread, overinterpret the news? And someone really wrote very well. They carry, what do heavy news watchers reveal? They carry a misperception of risk, anxiety, lower mood levels, learned helplessness, contempt and hostility towards others, desensitization, and in some cases, complete avoidance of the news.
Please.
I think that's what sums up the fear, which is what sums up the proposition, which is why they've gone in for this hyperbolic exaggeration and this vilification of my dear friend Arnab Goswami.
Thank you, Shapan Dashgupta. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard 5 speakers for the motion, 5 speakers against the motion. We're now going to get into the summing up, and as is the traditional format, the first bit of the summing up will in fact not go for the motion, it goes against the motion. The only little difference is that both the teams were entitled to 3 minutes each. We're going to change that a little to balance it off because one of the speakers here went over time, but we'll balance it off. So Kunal Sarkar will be summing it up for the opposition. Kunal, you get 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, we give you a bell and then wrap it up in 30 seconds after that, right? Kunal Sarkar, Dr. Are you on? Sorry? How unfair am I? Yes. Well, you come to your own conclusions how fair or unfair I've been this evening.
Mr. Chairman, sir, the very point at which Cyrus graciously accepted Calcutta Debating Circle's invitation, we looked for somebody in expertise in child protection. Because that gives us every ambit and right to protect the child in him. The kind of sort of juvenile innocence with which he simplified the political and journalistic paradigm that prevents, abdicating the responsibility that all this jingoistic acrobatics happens across the news media because you all, the Nalini Singhs, the Cyrus Brochas, the left liberals, the rest of you lack the collective grit, the collective conscience, the ability to set a standard of performance and a standard of information that encourages this banality to hurt the nation day in and day out. Thereafter, we had Nalini Singh, who, coming from Delhi, today sits within the watertight compartmentation of the liberal left and the radical right. And never ever will one speak to one another. Never ever will JNU ever appreciate the ABBP perspective, or the ABBP ever have a cross conversation with the JNU perspective, because in your insular, isolated partition, you allow distortion of perspective to happen. And that is the crux. That is the soul of our presentation, that you separate the willful distortion of perspective from factual errors, which really constitutes fake news. And the term fake news, for those of you who are history buffs, generated from the same place which gave us Alexander the Great, which happens to be Macedonia. Sean is doing a fantastic job in Harrow with debating, but he's not doing an equally good job with history, ladies and gentlemen. From Sean, we heard that Nazi Germany had no fake news. Hitler's entire interpretation of Nietzsche's philosophy was fake, ladies and gentlemen. Nazi Germany's entire data that they fed on Operation Overlord, Operation Barbarossa, Hitler could not be woken up from sleep at 10 a.m. in the morning when Operation Overlord happened, simply because the kind of perception that Hitler had to be fed with the good news that the attack has not happened in Normandy, it had happened somewhere in the coast of Norway. So Sean, for future reference, when we meet again, get the history right. Shundeep Chatterjee is a brilliant, brilliant debater and a more brilliant neurosurgeon who has come to the conclusion that the human brain is naturally delusional.
Time is up.
Wait a minute, Don, because he speaks for himself, not for all of you. And it is our deposition from this side, Mr. Chairman, sir, that the civic society needs to stand up, recognize the value of news and information, and not give in the towel that easily. The civic society waits for that day when dengue, diarrhea, and rape can be discussed as human conversation.
Kunal, you have to wrap it up, please.
And not as distorted political agenda, and that is where it hurts the sensitivity of the chairman. I remain. Thank you.
Thank you. You have as many minutes as Swati gives you, because she's looking at the clock today.
If you have a point of view, you don't need to speak so long. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, I start off with a word the leader of the opposition used just now: false perspectives. That precisely is the difference between news and fake news. Dr. Kunal Sarkar told us about a newspaper that has some 35,000 facts, and in that had 100 factual errors. That is not our contention from this side. It is not the fictitious things written versus the facts. It is the backdrop, the perspective in which the fact is portrayed. And Dr. Sarkar reminded me of a story I heard in medical school. There was this patient who was on a bed with his hand like this struck across his chest. A team of professors came with their students. One group of professors saw the patient and said, "This patient has a paralysis of the muscles of the upper arm. That's why he's got his hand across his chest." The group of professors went away. Another group of students came with another professor, looked at the same patient and said, "This patient has a tumor in his left lung. That's why he's holding his hand across his chest," and went away. A third set of students came, led by their professor, looked at this same patient and said, "This patient has an orthopedic problem with his shoulder joint. He can't move it. That's why he's got his hand there." When the three teams of professors had expressed their opinion and left, a student nurse walked into the room and took out a thermometer from under the axilla of the patient. News is painting facts in the right perspective. Fake news, ladies and gentlemen, is putting facts in the wrong perspective. And that is what is our contention from this side of the floor. A man steps out on the road in Chaurangi, and the light is green for the car, red for the pedestrian, and maybe Derek O'Brien's huge, massive, expensive SUV runs him over. The news would be a pedestrian stepped out wrongly in front of Mr. O'Brien's car. Would that what the media would write? No. Swati, that's 3 minutes? Thank you for letting me know I've finished half my time. Would that be what the media would write? A pedestrian stepped out in front of Mr. O'Brien's car and got run over? No. The media would write, Mr. O'Brien's car plowed through a pedestrian at the crossing. Both are facts. One is news, one is fake news. Statement of facts, changing the perspective. That is the difference between true news and fake news. And this changing of perspective is what me and my colleagues on this side of the floor have been trying to tell you about. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, the reason true news is dead is because we've moved from the era of I want to know to the era of the nation wants to know, the era of true news to fake news. We do not like true news because we hate to love. We like fake news because we love to hate others. And fake news vilifies others, it pleases us. True news was a necessity. Fake news is a fabrication. And yet, the fiendish fiction of fake news fascinates, favors, fulfills, and even titillates. The total truth of true news tortures, terrifies, testifies to the truth. True news, ladies and gentlemen, is what you are here to want. Fake news is what you want to hear. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the summary of our contention from this side, and I hope you will bear that in mind when you cast your vote. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I've never sat down and spoken in my life, but anyway. Now it's up to you. It's up to you. Please bring out your mobile phones, and we're going to get ready to vote again. So there we go. You need to bring your mobile phones out and get ready for the voting. Or should we do a show of hands? How many of you want show of hands? Let's have a show of hands. Okay, now hands down. How many of you want a mobile phone vote? Put up your hands. Okay, cool. So we'll go with the show of hands. Nice, good old, yeah. And that also means, because you told me it'll take about 7 minutes to calculate the vote, etc. So it also means the speakers, you know, we're going to the bar after this to get a beer. So that's the faster we get to the bar. Well, I don't know whether this side won or this side won, but there are few cities in the world where you could come, a debate like this, with 10 speakers and a jam-packed audience and no one has walked out. I think Calcutta, please give yourselves, let's give ourselves a big hand. That is wonderful. Okay, that's super. Now, we're going to go straight to the vote. Okay, here we go. If you are this side for the motion, okay, then we're going to ask you to raise your right hand. Your right hand if you are for the motion. That is these 5. Okay? 5. Campaigning hasn't ended. Cyrus, try. Yeah. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Raise your right hand now. Shh. Okay? Down. If you're for this side, raise your right hand, please. Okay. I will tell you. No. It's obviously much less. When we started off, it was 65-35. Okay? We're going to go back to this side again. How many of you voted this side? Please put up your right hand. Right hand. Right hand. Come here and help me, please. Just keep it up. Yeah. Okay. He gave me a number. I agree with the number. He gave me a number. I didn't give the number. Okay, because I was sitting in the middle. He says it was 65-35. That's changed 75-25. So 75-25, the motion carries. The motion carries, but it's been a wonderful debate. The level of speaking has been top class, and the best news of this debate so far is that there is no vote of thanks. So that's really wonderful. You know, before you finish, we've all really expressed ourselves. You know, sometimes you hope when you see some news, it really is fake news. I got up this morning at 4:30 in the morning, and I saw something on my Twitter feed, and I was just hoping, ever hoping, it was fake news. Sri Devi, we love you. Rest in peace. Good evening.